Welcome everyone. Really looking forward to this panel here. We're going to be discussing basically the future energy mix. It's really a discussion of, what are potential different pathways to the future. Not so much, a specific prediction or a crystal ball, but rather how do different parts of the energy mix, specifically in our case, we have three really esteemed panelists, Maria Pena, Nathan Snoke, and Alaa Elwany, and they represent different sectors within the industry. Maria is with an operator, Shell. She's a global process owner, wells, reservoir, and facilities management. That's called WRFM at Shell. And she's also a production technology and chemistry global discipline head. So she will talk from that perspective. Nathan, on the other hand, is the hydrogen and new energies global account manager at Halliburton. So he can give us a glimpse of the service industry's perspective and their approach to the changing energy mix. And last but not least, Alaa Elwany is a professor at A&M University, and he's also an ASME Foundation Swanson Fellow. And he recently finished an assignment in Washington at the DOE, so he'll also be able to share his experience both working in the government and in academia in that perspective. So what we'll do here in this panel is we'll start with three presentations from each. I'll ask Alaa to go first, and then Nathan, and then Maria. So allow us some time to get her presentation loaded up from this end. Each will take about 15 minutes, and talk again from their viewpoint, what their experience has been, what they're seeing, and then the last half an hour we'll spend going through some Q&As. I've prepared a bunch of talking points and questions and answers in previous meetings with the panelists. So we'll use that as a feedstock, and I'll also keep a lookout maybe on the Q&A if there are also questions that come from the audience. But without further ado, and I'll ask each of you, as you go through your slides, please talk a little bit more about your background, what you've been doing, in the past, but also recently, and how you're involved in this whole energy transition, energy future mix from your perspective. So if you go ahead, Alaa, if you can share the slides from your end, you should see a green button with an arrow pointing up. You should be able to use that. And you can go ahead.
Good. Thank you, Hani. See my screen all right?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon and good morning and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. But I'm assuming most of the audience is on US timing. But thank you for the opportunity. Very glad to be here today. My name is Alaa Elwany, and I want to just start off our panel by provoking some thoughts about what is entailed and what is needed in securing America's future energy transition. We'll get to some details of this in a couple of minutes. Before I do that, I will quickly let me get my laser pointer on. Before I do that, I'll just very quick overview of my profile. Thanks for the introduction, Hani. I am a professor at the Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering, Texas A&M University. I've been there for the last 11 or 12 years, conducting research and education and educating students on the graduate and undergraduate levels. But before Texas A&M, I also served in the industry as a research scientist at General Motors. But most notably, in the last 4 years of my 3-4 years of my life, I've had a taste of the great taste and feeling of public service, where I have served as a federal fellow for the U.S. government. This essentially competitive fellowship programs that select people from academia, industry, and the private sector to go to Washington, D.C., work in one of the federal agency or in the legislative branch, and basically lend our expertise and provide expertise and input to policymakers that shape different policies across the federal government that's useful to the country. So I did so for the last 2 years. I have served at the U.S. Department of Energy. I still am heavily engaged with them through my role as faculty member and as a private contractor in Texas. And before that, I also worked at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that's under the Department of Commerce. So through these two steps in my career, I've had great exposure to how the federal government operates and how decision making and the legislations are crafted. So why do we need to worry about the future energy transition in the US or worldwide? But I'm going to be focusing on the US today. Well, we need that because I think we all agree that the world is changing. The world as we know it in the last 4 or 5 years is changing, sometimes to the good, sometimes, but there definitely are some challenges. We have been struck by a global pandemic. I don't mean to be stating the obvious over here, but sometimes it's useful to take a global look in one slide to realize that we've been hit by a global pandemic. We're facing climate change. We have all seen what it is to struggle from supply chain issues with chips and semiconductors that affect us on the personal life. I mean, in 2021, many of us were not able to buy a laptop or experience 3-4 months wait time just to buy a computer. So things that we really take for granted, we started to recognize that these things can go away. Wildfires, supply chain issues. I don't know about you. Again, in 2021, I was not even able to buy a bike or a pair of dumbbells just because of the global pandemic. So the takeaway message over here, the world is changing. I think we all agree to this, and no debates are needed. Now, as the world changes, America is taking actions. How is America taking action? Multiple ways, but I would like to highlight things that I have directly contributed to or witnessed from the government kitchen over the last 3-4 years. So what America has done and is continuing to do is setting ambitious goals and investing in innovation and bills and legislations in order to address or to hopefully address what I have shown on this slide. I'm just showing some examples over here because these are some really notable examples. So if you take a look at the left over here, that's an executive order that has been issued in the end of 2021 from the Executive Office of the President, which is an executive order aimed to encourage all the federal agencies to strengthen the resilience of critical supply chains. What's a critical supply chain? It's a supply chain of anything that affects our lives. I've given an example with chips and semiconductors. There are other important things that are either less obvious, such as critical materials and critical minerals, for example. So this was issued, and then as this was issued by the U.S. president, agencies responded to it, including the Department of Energy. So the Department of Energy did issue its report and a very comprehensive plan to lay America's strategy of securing the supply chain for a robust, clean energy transition. This is what I'm going to be talking about today. We have actually set a very ambitious goal of 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035 and net zero emission economy overall across the board by 2050. Obviously, very, very difficult targets to achieve. And you can see similar reports issued by the Department of Defense, Department of Transportation, the National Science Foundation, NASA. All of these have been responding to this. Now, responding to this executive order was not just through publishing a strategy. Publishing a strategy is just a document, but it's about taking the steps needed to execute these strategies in order to address the challenges that we see over here. So an example of this is the BILL law, or the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's essentially big investment in the nation's infrastructure and competitiveness. It includes $62 billion to deliver, it deals more with energy equity and clean energy. And of course, the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, that is the highest federal investment in R&D in the history of the country, which aimed to invest $369 billion just to modernize the American energy system. So this is a big investment in America's future through innovation. And of course, the CHIPS and Science Act, which was obviously triggered by the semiconductor supply chain challenges we witnessed during COVID. And this one has $50 billion. I'm not going to go through the details of the CHIPS and Science Act. I did provide input that helped in drafting the legislation, but essentially $50 billion divided into approximately $11 billion geared towards R&D, research and development, and $39 billion to strengthen the domestic manufacturing capabilities in chips in the US. Because what happened with chips and semiconductors, that America has always been the leader in both innovation and manufacturing of chips. But over the last 30 years, we kept innovation. We're still the global leaders in the design and innovation for new types of semiconductor devices and whatnot. But we gave away the manufacturing edge that is now mostly in Taiwan. So these are all examples of what the US, of what America is doing to take action. Okay, sounds good. And like I said, IRA is basically focused on the clean energy transition. So what do these legislations mean to do? Again, like I said, we are meaning to put a lot of investments in advanced technologies. See, here's the point. I don't mean for this to get to be on a debate about climate change, about whether we should do clean energy, whether we should do fossil fuel. All these are important. The fact is, regardless of which US administration is in place, what people are thinking, whether you are a believer in clean energy or more a believer in fossil fuel, regardless of what you say, investing in advanced technology is a must. Advanced technologies, what defines advanced technology? Well, there is a report published by the Executive Office of the President a couple of years ago. It was published a couple of years ago and just got updated last year with a list of 13 categories of advanced technologies. These include artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, microelectronics. Of course, each of them includes some subcategories as well. And do not think these are cliches, artificial intelligence. Some people overuse the term sometime, but the fact is, in order to secure our energy future, whether it's through clean energy or through other or less clean energy defined by some, we have to invest in these advanced technologies. And the specific technology I want to allude to today is materials and manufacturing, because materials and manufacturing has always been viewed as DDD. What does DDD stand for? Dirty, dangerous, and dull. You see more people in the last decade wanting to go get employed at Google or Apple or the high-tech industry or the oil and gas industry, but less people interested in manufacturing. This has changed in the manufacturing renaissance, as we call it, that started in 2010. So manufacturing is not DDD anymore. Manufacturing actually is an advanced technology. If you take a look at this, at that list over here, you will find manufacturing in multiple places there. Because what happened recently, that we have a push to start investing in the digital transformation of manufacturing. We are leading this national strategy on smart manufacturing together with the National Academy. And with that, we are trying to change the perception and change manufacturing from DDD to CCC, clean, comfortable, and creative. Now you go to a manufacturing facility, you do not see a dirty place, a dangerous place, like the common perception of an old foundry that is hot and dark and dangerous. Now you enter into a factory like Tesla's Gigafactory, for example, or any other factory. If you go to one of the DOE national labs, you see robots, you see Internet of Things, you see sensors, you see control panels and so on. So manufacturing has really become a technology that makes use of all these advanced technologies to achieve energy savings, especially through smart manufacturing and digital transformation. And in fact, if you take a look at our investment at the U.S. Department of Energy over the last 4 or 5 years, you will see that we have placed sizable investments through the IRA and the BIL and the Chips and Science Act to bolster our advanced manufacturing global leadership. And that's not because just we think manufacturing is important arbitrarily. If you take a look at numbers, the manufacturing sector does account for approximately 11 to 12% of the national GDP. That's a big number. And almost 10% of the US workforce is employed in manufacturing. So manufacturing is not a luxury anymore. Manufacturing is not only important for energy. Manufacturing now is a matter of national security. We need to retain our global leadership in manufacturing in order to support many things, and one of them is including energy and clean energy transition. If you examine the White House's strategic plan, so in 2022, I was blessed to contribute directly with sections to this plan. Every 4 years, the White House or the Office of Science and Technology Policy that reports to the US President comes up with a quadrennial strategic plan on advanced manufacturing. How do we retain our global leadership in manufacturing? And if you examine that, you will find that the objective listed on that strategic plan, all 3 out of 3 out of almost 7 have energy in them. It does call for innovations in manufacturing to enhance environmental sustainability, address climate change, and to strengthen supply chains, including energy supply chains. By the way, let me give you, before I wrap up, I want to give you a small example about what I mean by supply chains. I talked about semiconductors and microelectronics. I think this is very clear, but I'll tell you one thing. Large components that are 5 to 10 tons, such as big rotors for wind turbines and so on. You cannot produce these in the US anymore. 100% of the large components that are needed for modern energy systems come from abroad. So when we say that manufacturing is a matter of national security, if we don't restore this capability to the US domestically, then we are at the hand of foreign suppliers that if they decide not to sell us these components, or if they face a natural catastrophe that disrupts their ability to provide us with components, our overall energy system is going to collapse. So that's why these are really important. And if you dig deeper and open just the cover page of that strategic plan, you will see that enabling clean and sustainable manufacturing to support decarbonization is objective number 1 in that strategic plan. So this is where I make the linkage between advanced manufacturing and energy systems. Of course, this objective includes decarbonization sub-objectives, such as decarbonization of manufacturing, clean energy manufacturing technologies, and sustainable manufacturing and recycling. This is when we talk about things like circular economy, recycling, how do we use artificial intelligence to boost this, how do we use digital transformations, and so on. I think I just have a minute or a minute and a half left, so I'll just wrap up my introductory talk saying that I have been blessed to serve at the Advanced Materials and Manufacturing Technologies Office at the Department of Energy. And this is the office, the national convener that is lying at the intersection of transforming manufacturing, innovations in manufacturing in the classical sense, and where does this affect the energy, America's future energy transition, and help achieve the goals that we just talked about, pollution-free electricity by 2035 and decarbonized economy by 2050. We invest in multiple classes of technology, including batteries, hydrogen fuel cells, new high-performance materials, geothermal. So it's not just about wind turbines. There are other technologies. Again, no debates whether we need more clean energy or more fossil fuel. But regardless whether we do this or that, we need to invest in these advanced technologies. And that's the point that I wanted to emphasize over and over again. In fact, our office has witnessed an increase in its budget since its inception, almost quadrupled across two different administrations, Democratic and Republican, which signals that this is important regardless of your views. So I'm gonna stop over here and just conclude with a statement that says securing America's energy future can only happen through advanced manufacturing technologies or advanced technologies in the broader sense. And this is definitely enhanced by manufacturing digital transformations, which I'm sure that many of us are going to talk about today. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the remainder of the discussion afterwards.
Thank you, Alaa. Very, very interesting and thought-provoking. Nathan, I'll ask you now to please share your slides.
Transition. Yeah, happy to do so. Let me pull this up. Tell me when you see this.
Yep.
Okay, you can see it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, as mentioned earlier on, my name is Nathan Snoke, and I'm the global account manager here within in Halliburton for our New Energies group. That includes hydrogen, direct lithium extraction, methane abatement, and then kind of any other novel application for wellbores that could support new energies. And there's actually quite a few as you dig into a little bit further. So really happy to be with you here today. I actually started out in the regular oil and gas industry, traditional oil and gas, 20 years ago in the mountains of western Colorado, and have fortunately since then moved on through serving many capacities, including managing operations in about 26 countries over the period of that time. A lot of it related on the chemistry side of our business, and so I have had a chance to see many economies, many different applications of energy, many different energy price structures, many different sorts of programs that we use to explore for that. And so it provides a nice kind of broad range of skill set as we apply that to what we call our low carbon solutions here at Halliburton. So that's a little bit about me. And then if we kind of shift over to the future energy mix, there's a few things that, of course, Hani mentioned earlier on, which is one, none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know what that energy mix is going to look like, but we do know a few things about it. It's going to be different than the one that we have now. It will most likely be larger than the one that we have now in terms of total energy demand. As the world grows, as data centers grow, I mean, I'm sure many on this, for example, have seen the amount of demand that just the growing AI-based or data centers to support the AI revolution is just an astounding number. So we know it's going to be growing. We know when you're looking to energy, a very logical place to start is those that provide the energy mix today. They obviously have 150 years or so worth of experience of providing the world with reliable, affordable energy. And they can do it obviously at scale and at competitive prices. So it makes very great sense. And those companies are, what make up our customer base today. So it's a natural fit to look towards them. And it's also natural for those same companies to be the ones that are investing into the future energy mix. And I think you see that. The large IOCs are investing billions and billions of dollars into the segment. And fortunately, like as I mentioned, we get to work with them on a daily basis, and as a service company supporting them. And so a lot of our efforts in that area are working with them, but then there is a large portion of new customers. It's about a 50-50 mix, actually, of we look at the kind of the customers in our low carbon solution space versus our kind of traditional oil and gas sort of customers. But to kind of capture that well, I figured I'd start and look at our decarbonization journey, because a big chunk of our journey supports the future energy mix. So we look at it in three sort of categories in the way we approach this. So one is we look kind of at our own house. So one, we look at our operations baseline. What sort of emissions are we producing now with the current energy that we are consuming? Actually, that process has led to the development of technologies, including an emissions accounting platform called Envana that we've spun out of the company, actually. To infrastructure upgrades, emissions management. And I'll get into a slide for each one of these here in a moment, so I'm not going to dive into it too far. Advance our low carbon solutions. So this is externally looking. So this is going to be looking at our customers, both existing and new, that are have projects in CCUS, geothermal, and then, as mentioned, my specific area is the hydrogen and new energies. And then the third section of this is how do we accelerate clean energy opportunities? So this is emerging tech through our Halliburton labs, and then also forming strategic partnerships. We certainly recognize this low carbon solutions tech area is one of a lot of startups. One of very few companies have an end-to-end solution for many of these categories, and you will need to partner up maybe more so than we do with our traditional business, as new technologies consistently and continually developing and filling what might be gaps. So we really embrace the opportunity to form partnerships and collaborate outside of the company to help close the gap that might exist on some of the solutions. So if we start with decarbonizing. So as mentioned, it starts with kind of looking at in-house. So one, of course, there's the basics of looking at all of our facilities and ensuring that they are world-class in terms of reductions of emissions and efficiency. But then we go through actually products that we deploy in the field. This is a huge amount of the impact that we may have. And so we look at things such as reducing material in these, Dr. Elwany's discussion about this, advanced manufacturing. How do you remove components or materials? How do you remove those that might be providing additional, say, CO2, perhaps, for example, on the far right where you see reduced Portland cementing. That is the entire purpose of doing things such as that. And then in this middle category under completions, a large one is how do we transition over to electric frac fleets, which we've done about 40% of ours today. And we've electrified many other operations as well, such as many of our wireline packages out in the field around the globe as well. And so, there's a piece of this which is not everything has to be a revolutionary sort of technology. There can be many impactful evolutionary steps along the way if you do it with purpose. And that is the intent that we have taken on many of the systems, products, technologies that we deploy in the field. And we know that, by us doing this and our competition and our customers as well, when we do this collectively, it has a tremendous impact on what that energy mix looks like down the road and the impact down the globe and the climate that it has. The next piece is the low carbon solutions. So that's the piece in which I sit. And so this is where we leverage our core experience to extend that into the new energy markets. And what we mean by that is this, as a company, we've got 105 years worth of experience working in oil and gas with companies such as Maria's, for example. And that has given us the ability to build a large footprint, a large skill set, a large amount of resources. Well, we have deployed those traditionally to, say, oil and gas. However, many of those overlap and complement many of the new areas that we're focusing on for the future energy mix. So, a great example of that is CCUS. Well, when you're sequestering CO2 subsurface, of course, you need to drill wells for that. And so there's a lot of technology and capabilities that we have that will help reduce the learning curve, reduce the cost curve on those. Because many of these sorts of projects are first of their kind projects, which means they carry a first of its kind cost. And so when you can reach across the aisle to people that have been doing something similar, you can really help bring an improvement to that. Geothermal, we've been doing geothermal work really for about 70 years, but generally with slightly different intents and purposes in mind, and not to the scale at which the world is investing into that technology these days. And so we know similar, there's a variety of technologies that you need to develop subsurface that will enable geothermal at scale. High temperature drilling projects. Obviously, if you're drilling for geothermal heat, it's going to be in very high temperatures. Well, that can be very challenging to design technologies that can withstand those sort of temperatures. And then in the hydrogen piece, that's a big, broad term, hydrogen. And of course, there's the hydrogen color wheel that goes along with it. But for the hydrogen economy to grow and be sustainable, especially at scale, it's going to require many companies like ours focusing on the area that they can bring value to it. So where we tend to focus on that one is underground hydrogen storage. As we go to large grid sort of scale use of hydrogen, we will certainly need to replicate similar underground storage capacities or techniques that we have with natural gas storage, so that is needed. And then also many companies are now exploring natural hydrogen, naturally occurring hydrogen that's actually in the subsurface, not too dissimilar to say hydrocarbon reservoirs. So we are working with companies in that area as well. So we do that, collaborate early. As mentioned earlier, everything in this new tech area is built upon collaboration. Sharing our safety culture. Now, I would say this expands over to process culture as well. Once again, as you get into newer companies, newer tech, they might not have that same sort of process and safety cultures that are really needed to drive these globally. We, of course, leverage our global footprint. As mentioned, we like to focus on those areas that we know our core experience and resources can support, and that is most greatly done at focusing on subsurface insight, well-designed construction, and then also monitoring everything subsurface, especially as we get into CCUS. A big component of that is our measuring, monitoring, verification plans that you put around those wells, and that translates to hydrogen storage as well. And then the third piece on there, which was advancing new tech. And so we actually have a group. You'll notice this slide has a slightly different color theme than my other one. It's still within Halliburton. But a few years ago, we recognized the opportunity to really embrace kind of new tech ventures. So we stood up a group called Halliburton Labs. And what do they exist for? It's, the energy system of the future is going to require new solutions at scale in addition to hydrocarbons. We see this very much as a energy addition that we're going through today. So we know that our experience and our global footprint commercializing innovative solutions at scale, that is going to translate and will complement to accelerate energy and new climate tech ventures. So how we do that is, well, one, we've got an important mission on our Halliburton Labs group, which is the future of energy faster. What we do is we accelerate energy climate ventures to commercialization and build relationships, insights into new opportunities of emerging value chain. How do we do it? So this is really fun. We actually roll up our sleeves. We go to work with companies. So the way it works is we kind of have a company selection process where they pitch the ideas and to a panel, including our CEO on that. And we select those or bring them into the Halliburton Labs group. We do this around the globe. Many of the companies have a global footprint. And then what we do is we provide access to our organization, our experience, our expertise, global business network, and some cash in exchange for a minority equity stake on these. So this is lower on the TRL scale, but what we know is by providing companies, many great tech companies or many great ideas die in that area of the business plan wasn't solid, they didn't have a great access to market, or perhaps they were resource constrained. We know that we can provide some of those by just utilizing existing resources we have. So it's a great incubation program focused on, as you can see, really these 9 key areas, all of them supporting the future energy mix. So CCUS, critical minerals and mining, enabling tech, energy and power generation, energy conservation, energy storage, hydrogen, industrial decarbonization, and power conversion. We've actually got over 30 companies now in the Halliburton Labs portfolio, and we are continuing to add. We do about 2 different cohorts a year as we continue to add those on. So what we do know is that some of these companies will end up having a tremendous impact on our future energy mix. And so that is what I had to share with the group today, and I thank you for giving me a few minutes to do so.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. And by the way, I'm a big fan of Halliburton Labs. I remember meeting with Greg Powers and Scott Gale, may he rest in peace, early on during the design phase of Halliburton Labs, because they wanted some ideas, leveraging the Shell Game Changer program I was working before.
Oh, great. Yeah. Thanks for the feedback on that.
Yeah, a great program. And so I'm going to pull up now the slide you shared with me, Maria.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Hani?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, good.
Just one moment, please. Oh. It's just that thing, correct?
Just the one with the drawing, the cartoon.
So maybe while I pull it up, if you don't mind just giving some background about yourself as well, a little bit expanded background as I pull it up. So.
Will do, thank you. Just confirm for me the sound is okay now? Yes? All good? You can see me and the sound is okay. Okay, good. No, my name is Maria Pena. Like Hani introduced me very kindly. Thank you for including me in this session. Delighted to be here. I start with an apology. Clearly, a little bit of a fun fact is I'm running on a backup system. I had some IT challenges here joining up front. So apologies for that. I am up and running with my cell phone at the moment. So if for any reason there's a sound problem or anything else, Hani, please feel free to speak up and let me know.
No problem.
I am very much a Shelly and a little bit long tenured in the industry. Have worked for 26 years, always in Shell, but in a variety of different assignments. I am originally a chemical engineer, turned into what Shell calls either a petroleum engineer or a production engineer, depending a little bit on the assignment and the day. I am originally from Portugal, and so have had the pleasure of spending about half of my career in individual engineering assignments where I worked well design, especially completion design, and then startup of wells. I have also worked a large piece of optimization throughout my career and have participated in some pretty fabulous, I would say, high complexity upstream projects, particularly in the North Sea, where we had a number of high pressure, high temperature gas fields like Shearwater and Satellites. And then more near us now in the Gulf of Mexico, in projects like Deepwater Stones, that is currently in production today, and also more recently in the startup and stabilization of Appomattox, which is also one of our jewels out there. I would say currently occupying 2 hats, and I'm going to use these 2 hats to share the presentation and a few thoughts with you. One role I occupy at the moment is the global leadership of what Shell calls Wells, Reservoir and Facilities Management. And this is a term that applies to very much what I would call is traditional energy. It's traditional oil and gas. It comes from a 15 to 20 year history of trying to optimize oil and gas systems or oil and gas systems end to end through all the components. So that's one piece of the business I still see, which I would say we would think of as quite traditional, but at the same time is also going through quite a bit of revolution. And so I'll describe a little bit what that looks like. The second thing I see is I also then manage the skill pool globally in Shell of production chemists and production technologists. And there we have overall globally 600 people that touch many different projects. And then we see wind, solar, carbon capture, carbon storage, coming back into more traditional domains. And there I will wear the hat of sharing with you very much some of the common challenges I see in these different mixes, as well as, I think, interestingly, some of the common competencies, some of the common, let's say, knowledge pieces and traits that all of us as scientists and engineers or any others can use almost irrespective of the energy system that we touch. So, Hani, if you want to put the cartoon up, that is totally great. So let's go for it. Now, if I go back to thinking energy mix and energy transition, I fully agree with Nathan and also with Dr. Alaa. I mean, the mix, I'm going to say the pace of the transition may be different in different places in the world. Different places in the world have different types of energy today, energy systems. They have different types of strengths and different types of weaknesses. And so they may move along the transition curve in a slightly different way and at different speeds. Overall, though, I very much agree here with the previous panelists. The direction is one of the transition being required, the transition being challenging and at the same time exciting, because it's very important for the world in terms of quality of life, but also in terms of resilience of day-to-day systems to keep social stability. But the mix, I'm going to say, the mix of energy systems will likely continue to play out in some years to come. And I think maybe someone said we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know the exact amount of years. Really delighted to see that in the country level framework that there are targets. Really delighted to see that there's investment in R&D. But overall, when we look at the amount of energy we consume on any daily basis, and when we look at the amount of products that are out there, all the way from medical to others, that touch some type of molecule that is attached to also an energy system, when we look at all of that, we rapidly conclude that it's a very remote future, if ever one, where you only have one type of system and one type of technology. So that would be one key message I would leave you with. Now, saying all of that, what does that mean? That does mean that climate stability and safeguarding the earth we have is an absolute imperative. And so while all these energy mixes are at play, what technology and humans really need to help with is to make sure, or one of the things they need to help with at least, is to make sure that every different type of energy system is run in its most efficient way. And there are many ways in which different components of a system can be built to achieve net zero. So that is maybe a second message that I'm going to leave with you is we are seeing large degrees of advancement in I'm going to call it optimizing the traditional, so optimizing traditional oil and gas systems. We are also seeing sites around the world where there's excitement on then combining new technologies, combining renewable pieces, combining carbon capture, and arranging it in a way where you are able to achieve an overall net zero for society. Now, third message here would be, and I do think the panelists did also allude to this, a lot of the human skills, a lot of the competency skills that allowed us to succeed as societies in the past, I'm absolutely convinced will continue to be fundamental to get us to succeed in the future. And so what this cartoon is, the cartoon that you have on the screen, is a cartoon that says that for any energy system, end to end, including a traditional one where you may have a reservoir that has oil and gas, and then that reservoir gets the best technology with wells that then are connected through networks of pipelines, where then you have, separation, many times transformation, and then transportation to get bits and pieces to end customers. Through these systems, something that we've learned is how to look at each component to absolutely optimize it. So what we are seeing in traditional systems is a large shift, which is already happening, to finding ways in which each component has the least impact possible. For example, electrification and the electrification of components. There are many examples out there of, driving hardware. So we're talking about big machinery here. I think first panelists talked about manufacturing. So these are big separators, big compressors, big machinery, and many of them are today finding electrical power sources to make them least impactful. But I think even more magical than that, in traditional systems, we're now seeing integration with cleaner sources and with capture in a way where you can also tune the system day in, day out to match the demand to the customer, also in a way that has a lot less waste. Now, why does this matter? I think on one hand, it matters to have the conventional energy pieces be ultra efficient and ultra clean as much as they can, and have those being part of the energy mix, because that is also still a big part today and into some years to come of energy resilience. And so when you really think of needing resilience for the country and that energy security piece that was mentioned, this is still a large piece of the puzzle, still a large piece of that jigsaw. The competencies we have, all the way from geoscientists and subsurface and surface engineers, the traditional competencies we have are special, I think, in at least two ways. We traditionally built people that can integrate these systems and basically optimize them almost as very smart mathematical functions. And that is a trait that will continue to exist. The second piece of skill that we have from the past that is very interesting going forward are expertise, kind of deep engineering or deep expertise pieces that the newer energy systems also need. And I'm going to give you a few examples there. We see, for example, quite a bit of commonality between what you need to know to build an offshore oil and gas system with how you put offshore wind in operation. We see quite a lot of insight from an oil and gas system traveling across in the materials piece for carbon capture and carbon storage. So a lot of the engineering integration of components and a lot of the depth and niche expertises we see traveling across into the future. And so I wanted to share this as encouragement to say, scientists and engineers, in my mind, will continue to be special, and they have an immense role to play here. I'll maybe wrap up with sharing a final thought before we go into Q&A, and that's a final thought on also the evolution and revolution around digitalization, automation, and then around intelligence and artificial intelligence. Still learning a lot in that domain. Would say the traditional chemical engineers already did a lot of advanced process control and a lot of automation, and a lot of those insights are out there in the manufacturing industries. And again, you saw the manufacturing industries being mentioned there and popping up in the opening. On the AI domain, we continue to see a massive role for scientists and engineers to integrate insights and understanding across disciplines, and to actually be able to distinguish what is safe and what is true and what is actually an ultimate good product to put out there and a good solution to put out there. So I know there's many interviews out there anyone can watch, but the AI piece is certainly an enabler. But it's not a substitution. It is simply a new way of working at the moment. And it's one that we are also investing on to continue this optimization journey in the end-to-end system piece, whether it is for traditional systems or whether it is for new systems. Hani, I'm going to suggest to wrap it up there and maybe go into Q&A. I think we are more or less on time, so I hope that helps. Oh, I can't hear you. Is it?
I'm sorry. Yeah, that was excellent.
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you brought up a lot of good points, and of course, both Nathan and Alaa did. So let me pick on a few of those, if you don't mind. Before I do that, though, I realize now I didn't introduce myself, so maybe I'll do that too. So for the last 4 years, I've been managing director of NoviDigiTech. That's really my own company. There, I work primarily with startups and their investors and their partners and customers in order to create impact and drive growth, mainly through innovation and digital transformation. So my focus has largely been around digital, AI included. Prior to that, for 18 years, I was at Shell. My last position there was deep water digitalization lead and principal technical expert for formation testing and sampling and petrophysics. And then previous to that, I was a program called Game Changer. I think I mentioned that when I commented on the Halliburton Labs, commercial partnership manager there, and then previously also deep water technology advisor and capabilities manager. And then I was managing a team called Feast we had at Shell, which is an interdisciplinary team that looks at the value chain of fluids, reservoir fluids. So big believer in integration. That's sort of been the theme in much of my career. Previous to Shell, I spent about 15 years with Schlumberger, SLB as they call it now, in about 10 countries in Africa, Asia, and North America. Various positions, management, consulting, operations, technology development. I'll pick up on a few of the things I've heard and then hope to have a discussion there. But before I forget that particular one, I think the role of what you brought, Maria, just now, the importance of systems thinking is critical. And it's well established in the oil and gas business simply because it's been around for a long time, right? And the idea of thinking in systems, and WRFM is a mechanism for thinking about the production system as a system. This idea of systems thinking, I find, is often quite lacking actually in nascent systems, such as many of the new energy systems tend to be. In other words, there tends to be, I wouldn't describe it as myopic, but rather limited view of the totality of things. On a very basic level, there is, generally speaking, a lack of understanding of the totality of the techno-economic picture of a given energy system and the complexity around what it would take to replace or displace existing infrastructure, for instance. What the total impact on the environment, as you know, at Shell, again, company's been around for a long time. They developed a variety of robust de-risking methodologies. So at Shell, you'd look at risks in the totality of metrics. We call it TCOP, technical, economic, commercial, operational and political. Whereas sometimes, again, in nascent or evolving spaces, people tend to look at maybe just technical feasibility or just economic feasibility, assuming, for example, energy is free or something along those lines. You see a lot of that, for example, in the debates around green hydrogen, for instance, which tends to ignore to a large extent what it would take to retrofit or replace existing infrastructure, pipelines, what have you. But let me step back a little bit and add maybe a little bit of color to what each of you mentioned around, again, we're not speculating on the pace of energy transition or what have you, but just to add one interesting point, which I heard in the previous panel, by 2050, which is kind of the aspired net zero target, it's really more political target than it's a must, because really even the requirement of the Paris Accords is not so much to to have that stake in the ground. That's why companies and countries have been moving that around. But that aside, by 2050, the Earth will projected to be home to more than about 9 billion people. 75% of those probably living in cities. Urbanization has been an ongoing trend and continues to be one, up from about 50% today. Most of that growth, that next 1 billion, basically, will be in the developing countries of the global south. That's basically Africa and the Indian subcontinent, to the vast majority of that 1 billion. Now, these regions have a long way to go in terms of climbing the development ladder. And as we know, wealth and prosperity throughout the last 200 years since the Industrial Revolution have closely correlated with energy access. And so if we want to simplify things, since this is a largely audience which is familiar with petroleum engineering, if you take an easy number, basically the energy requirements in India and Africa are right around 1 barrel per person per year. Okay, simple number. Now, if you look at the trajectory of the adjacent countries, Southeast Asia, for example, China, Thailand, they had similar starting points to where India and Africa are today. But in the case of China, it increases 3 times today. And in the case of Thailand, 6 times. In the case of South Korea, by the way, 18 times. So you can see that these countries in India and Africa have a long way to go in terms of having parity in terms of energy access. Now, you could argue that they might leapfrog all that and switch today to a hydrogen economy or nuclear or what have you. The reality is it will very, very likely be a mix, which will involve to some extent fossil fuels and coal, and even burning animal residue and wood, because that's the reality again in the poorer southern countries. So with that in mind, one of the questions I had is that most of the recent reports show that the world is sort of failing or falling short, let's say, of the Paris Agreement goals. Okay, and basically the base case that's been defined, for a 2-degree C is just not achievable with the current trajectory, not even 2.5 probably. So in your mind, what role do governments, NGOs, energy companies, and service companies have to play in terms of helping? You mentioned a few things like, optimizing our own operations. You mentioned digital, but I'd like to hear from each of you, from your perspective, what role do we all, your organizations, play in sort of addressing that shortfall? So maybe Maria, I'll start with you since we just finished.
I mean, it's a great question, right? And there's probably no easy single bullet answer. We focus Mostly, so indeed, I will start by saying fully aware of the correlation between energy access, energy resilience, and I'm going to say quality of life, but yes, you called it wealth. So yes, fully aware of that. We basically at the moment encourage an array of technologies and array of ways of working to develop where you can then customize them to the local reality. And so from an operator point of view, what we want to do in many ways is to meet the demand in the most efficient and possible way. And so we have the solutions that were actually shown in the previous slides in many ways. We have an array of solutions that then can be optimized against a current reality and a location. But really, to some extent, we optimize on getting to the lowest impact, most near to net zero as we can in the fastest way. And that curve is different for everyone. So that I'll offer into the conversation. I think my colleagues may have more thoughts here. So, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe Alaa, there's a couple of questions I see here around mining in particularly in Africa. In African countries, there's a lot of participants from Africa here, by the way, on the call. So as you would know, a lot of the access to rare minerals and such is from Africa. So the question is, how can, I guess, fourth industrial revolution type technologies and advanced manufacturing contribute in making that transition, which would involve a lot of mining needs, more sustainable?
I'm going to phone a friend because I think there was someone else trying to come in to comment.
Yeah.
I'll hop on that one, I suppose, because we are supporting numerous customers around the globe in actually critical minerals pursuit. So, and it kind of ties back to the original presentations. I don't want to be generic on it, but it is looking at adjacent industries. So much of what we're doing now, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay, but it is pulling that information, pulling that expertise from somewhere you might not otherwise have been looking. So when it comes to critical minerals, for example, this is where technology is going to make a huge impact, I think, in our access to that. We are seeing a very large amount of companies that are traditional critical minerals mining companies, surface mining, brine dissolution pits, you kind of name it, huge footprint in both resource consumption, water demand, the actual just space it takes to do this, and now shifting towards, say, direct lithium extraction. Just in the case of lithium, we just grabbed that one, for example, where now, instead of a few hundreds of acres, you can now do from about an acre and a half, extract similar amounts of lithium in the right formation. Of course, just like any sort of natural resource, you can't do it everywhere. You have to be sitting on top of the resource for these sort of to work. But then it's the technologies that will help you tap into that in the most efficient way possible, as Maria was just saying. And so I think there's a blend of both private industry and regulatory framework in the sense that can support the exploration into some new areas, because these are different business models, completely different business models. And I think, we're seeing this convergence of aspiration and commercial realization come to I don't want to say collision course, but they're coming together in the sense right now where you're seeing, especially for the hydrogen, for example, right? A lot of it, you're talking about green hydrogen earlier. Well, we're realizing the economics and the commercial side of these things, unfortunately, just doesn't make as much sense as we were hoping it would. And so, back to this mining piece, the regulatory component can help drive some of that, whether that be through incentives, which we see here. I just want to pull an analog from the US, as Dr. Elwany had mentioned. The Inflation Reduction Act is driving a lot of technology investment and a lot of investment in operations in these various areas, and some of that includes critical minerals. There's large amounts of DOE funding that is supporting critical minerals pursuit, and that's going to fund technologies that will also be exportable to Africa. So, there is this piece of private industry reaching across industries outside of maybe the traditional one, looking for answers, and then B, there is this component that we know that regulatory or policy decisions can aid in enabling those and actually getting projects off the ground from academia and from just research to actual production.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I want to piggyback on a few things that you and Maria mentioned, and also Hani asked, and in fact, some of the questions in the chat are. Role of government is very important, but let's clarify something. Role of government is not just to pump R&D dollars. Of course, it's that. As you have seen, IRA and chips and whatnot, we're pumping billions of dollars. Role of government is much more involved and much more philosophical. The government acts as, whether it's the US government or any other government, by the way, in Africa, in Asia, anywhere. The government should act as the convener, meaning there are a lot of advanced technologies that we need for clean energy transition anywhere in the world, right? So we need to, now all these new technologies, they are, when they're new, they're very expensive. Small and medium manufacturers cannot adopt them. Even large manufacturers are hesitant to adopt them because there's resistance to change. There's something that's already working. Why should we use that new carbon capture technology when what we've been using is working, and so on? The government acts as a convener, bringing people from industrial R&D, from government research labs, from industries, that convenes them and help them de-risk all these technologies and help them push these technologies through the commercialization pipeline such that they get out of the lab and into actual usage. So that's a very important role of government that should be done. An example of this is in critical materials. And now, Hani also asked about how does digital technologies and digital transformation play out in terms of critical materials and critical minerals, but other ones. So I'm sure many of you have wondered when I showed that slide that we are leading smart manufacturing national strategic plan, that why is DOE doing that? Isn't that something that the National Science Foundation does, that DARPA does, and so on? Well, no. Smart manufacturing and digital technology in general, like using sensors, using cloud computing, using high performance computing, and all these technologies have an immense impact on energy, such that it makes perfect sense for agencies like the Department of Energy to be leading these. So all these digital technologies have a direct impact on energy savings, direct and indirect impacts, actually, that I can easily give a full lecture on when needed. So I wanted to mention these two things. There was one more thing, but I lost my train of thoughts. Finally, one thing to say is that when you gave an example, Hani, about India and China and the Paris Agreement, we have to also to put in mind the developed countries are more responsible for climate impact than other ones. So we shouldn't be discounting the role of the developed world in stepping in to address the global climate crisis, such that more developing countries do not suffer from something that they didn't create. They are not them that released all these emissions. Finally, before I conclude my thought, I'd like everyone also to be aware that AI and ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning, when you run a query on ChatGPT or on Google Gemini, you typically overlook that these are very energy intensive technologies to use. That's also one of the reasons that we need to be so we're not just researching new AI and ML technologies, but how can we make these less energy intensive? You'd be surprised if I tell you about the amount of energy consumption in Google data centers or in or stuff like this. So I know I've said too many thoughts that are seemingly disconnected, but they're all, elements of one big story, that advanced technologies are really needed for energy future, and the role of government in convening the innovation ecosystem. Without that, nothing is going to happen, because none of these entities, small manufacturers, large manufacturers, universities, labs, and so on, none of them can do it on their own. They need a unifying umbrella to help them achieve it as one big entity. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thanks, Alaa. Let me pick up on last thing you said. Really, digital technologies, not only are they kind of really the main big lever left to the oil and gas industry to go to the next level of operational excellence, some of the things that Maria was talking about, but it's actually imperative for new energy systems, because they tend to be more distributed, more intermittent, and the IEA expects by 2026, AI in particular, as you mentioned, will need 10 times the amount of power it did last year. So in 3 years, 10 times, all right?
Yes.
Mainly driven by AI needs. So that is both an opportunity, of course, but it's kind of scary. The scary part is there's a lot of worry, notwithstanding the worry about energy transition within professionals in the oil and gas industry, about what happens to their jobs, about AI itself scavenging some of those very same jobs. So what are your views on that? What are words of potential encouragement to new professionals and college students that are on the call that may be concerned about future job prospects because of both energy transition and AI and digitalization? Maybe Maria, if you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm trying to think here of the right analog. And I'm not sure this is a perfect analog, but just because I have a car, I did not stop walking. And I'll think of a better analog. But here's what I'm trying to say. The AI piece, I'll maybe connect first to the infrastructure and the piece that we were talking about on the more the societies with more advanced and more developed systems have a massive role to play. I think there, yes, absolutely. In particular, because in these systems, the different components that make the energy chains from generating energy to putting them with the customer to consume, those energy chains are a lot more connected in terms of physical hardware. There's a lot less manual manipulation or wastage of transporting one good from here to there to making something else happen. So because in the more advanced systems, you have more hardware connectivity, you also now have a better foundation with more sensors, more connectivity to put either machine learning or AI or anything else on top of it to optimize the systems and make them producing and generating the max for the least amount of impact. So I'll start there. Now, in terms of careers, we have already at this moment in time many examples where we've partnered up with AI gurus, let's say, to optimize pieces of the system. And what we see is that automating and adding intelligence to routine work and routine tasks is within our fingertips. The combination of multidisciplinary insight is very, very difficult for AI to conquer at the moment. I'm going to say at the moment. I mean, things continue to evolve all the time. So the belief here is one where the roles are not necessarily diminishing, the roles are changing. Let me give you maybe a very easy digital example. Someone who was a guru in seismic in the past and had a massive hand on finding the right oil and gas systems in the subsurface. They did a lot of manual manipulation and they did a lot of finding themselves and a lot of searching. In an AI-enabled system, their expertise may be more driven to de-risking and thinking of which pieces of what's being flagged is best. So it may be a more integrated insight on where the next investment should go versus what it used to be. Another very easy example, a production engineer that manipulated a lot of sensor data decades ago or even a decade ago, all that aggregation and manipulation of data becomes much easier if the digital systems are set up right. But actually how to integrate them across to see how to unlock a limit next and how to change a piece of the system into something better that produces more, that is a lot more difficult to digitize at this moment in time. So I think we will see great needs for people that are amazing at thinking through the connections of all the system and to see what digital cannot see easily. And then, so that's the horizontal for me, the horizontal competence. We will continue to see extremely deep expertise being required, whether that is in subsurface imaging or whether that is in complex production systems, etc. We are opening new frontiers of energy solutions all the time as well. So the human creativity there to look for better solutions, in my mind, is difficult to mimic through digitalization at the moment. Very difficult to mimic. So I'm not going to say never, but I think it's a very, very, very far future at best.
Thanks for those encouraging words. And by the way, creativity is one of the areas in which the current AI systems really struggle.
I did see a CEO, sorry, Hani, if I could add, I did see a CEO in an interview the other day, and I have to say, I cannot remember the CEO, so I'm not going to be able to mention it. But I did see a CEO from AI, one of the AI companies, say, if the question is whether I will still have a job in a decade, he said, my competition is not AI. My competition is the scientist, engineer, or business leader that is learning how to work with AI to then put the human insight and the going beyond on top of that. That's what he saw was his competition. And that person would continue to be having a job as CEO. So I thought that was quite inspirational as well. Encouraging, as you said.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for sharing that. We got a couple of minutes, so I'll just go for 1 minute. Nathan, if you can share just some advice, career advice, general advice to, new technical professionals and students, given your experience, what important things, in a minute or so, if you can.
Absolutely. I'll be quick. Thank you for that. What I is going to kind of dovetail on what Maria was saying, especially when you think of AI, have a broad curiosity. Learn what your colleague is doing, and on both sides of you. Maria is a prime example. She's doing like 3 jobs right now. Okay, AI can't do 3 jobs at the same time. When you have this curiosity, willingness to step out there and do that, these are the things. AI is going to continue to be great going very deep, but not so great at going wide. And so, if you want to stay in competition of both ahead of your fellow employees for the next promotion, or in front of technology that develops, have this unending curiosity and willingness to go outside that comfort zone, learn your colleague's job, learn more about new areas, and And that allows you to then synthesize that information into the job you have now and make a bigger impact. Like Maria, I've been in parts of where we started automating pieces of the organization before, and it scared the daylights out of some of the people that were initially impacted. They thought we were going to replace their job because we had a machine that started doing parts of it. And the reality is it didn't do that at all, but it did enable them to use their skill set to make a much bigger impact and a much bigger value. So if you have a very small view of your job and your skill set, that could be concerning, but if you have a bigger, broader view of your job and your skill set, then these things are tools and they're going to make you better and more effective.
I love that. I fully agree. I love that.
Thank you. Alaa, you have the final word, just a couple of words.
Yes, very quickly. You can these types of questions have been brought up with the first industrial revolution, with the second industrial revolution, with the computer, with internet. You can be concerned. So that's to the students out there. You can be concerned all what you want. It's happening. So please embrace it. Take it as an opportunity. Turn the challenge to an opportunity. No one's gonna take your job. All you need to do is to prepare yourself. How to prepare yourself? Just equip yourself with the tools that you need. You can do it for free. If you are here listening to this seminar, this means you have a computer and internet connection. Go to Coursera. There are very generic, unbelievably well-designed certificates for AI and machine learning and deep learning. Take those for free. You don't even have to buy this to opt for the paid certification. At the end of the day, we do not want, the world right now does not necessarily needs an AI expert or ML expert anymore. There are too many of those. They need someone with domain expertise in oil and gas, in manufacturing, in textile, in any other industrial sector, but that does know the basics of AI ML to be able to apply them to there. But just knowing AI ML by themselves is not sufficient. We still need your expertise. We still need your domain expertise, just augmented with AI, just like you augmented your skills with Microsoft Excel 20 years ago. I'm gonna leave it at here. And I really want to thank Hani and all the organizers for the unbelievable effort they did in bringing us together, which was not an easy task for them in terms of scheduling and preparing. So Hani, Ahmed, Dr. Suleiman, my fellow panelists, Maria and Nathan, thank you so much. It was an honor. Thanks.
Thank you, Alaa. Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed this, learned a lot, and really appreciate it. And want to thank the audience and, of course, Dr. Garhi and Dr. Suleiman for being the engine behind all this. Thank you, Maria. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Alaa.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, all. Thank you.
Please feel free to share our emails with all the attendees if they have direct questions that they'd like answered. Thank you very much.
Sure, will do. Thank you very much. This was
Thank you.
great.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.